do we have like a graphic or something we want to put up? Can we? Okay, I'll try to find I'll get yours.
Oh, how do you do that?
I mean, we would just need to like put it on somebody's screen and then pin them to the screen.
Hold on. Yeah, let me do that. I can do that. I know what you're talking about now.
Okay. We have 4 attendees who are watching us right now. Hello.
I think they're in the waiting room.
There's not a waiting room on webinar.
Oh, shit. No. I just need to like scoot off camera for this. It's not working. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing here.
Don't worry about it. We're all here. Welcome everybody to this fundraiser. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We are working out some tech issues on our end, but we're so glad that you are here and that you made it tonight. If you haven't yet, you should consider donating to the fundraiser that we are all here to donate to tonight. I'm going to put the link in the chat. So you should go ahead and throw some money towards the miners tonight.
Solved, and now Braxton should be logging in. Install.
Welcome everybody who's here tonight for the fundraiser. We're so glad to see all of you filing in tonight. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We're so glad that you're able to make it this evening. If you're just joining us and you haven't been able to make a donation yet tonight, please do that. You can do that right here at the Gofundme link. We are just about to get started. If you want, you can introduce yourself in the chat. We want to see where people are from. I bet we have people from all over the country coming in here to support the miners tonight. All right, we got people from Austin. We got somebody from North Alabama, DSA. That's awesome. Charleston, Columbia. That's Columbia, South Carolina. Nice. Buffalo by way of Tuscaloosa. Amazing. Auburn, excellent. Brian, I'm also in Michigan, wonderful. Lexington, Kentucky, people from all over the place, wonderful.
Thank you, Caitlin, for taking over our navigating our final little tech issues here. As Caitlin said, welcome everybody. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. We are figuring out a couple final little tech things, but in the meantime, our squad of people behind the scenes should be dropping the donation link for our Gofundme fundraiser in support of the UMWA miners that are on strike right now. Use these first few minutes to introduce yourself in the chat and to help us get that fundraiser over $5,000. That'll put us a third of the way toward our goal that we'll be raising this month. Thank you everybody for your patience. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. All right. People continuing to file in right now. Again, people from our tech team will be dropping the donation link in the chat. Feel free to make a donation, help us get over $5,000 as we get started with our call here. My name is Chris Izor. I am one of the co-chairs of Birmingham DSA. I will be guiding us through our journey tonight, and we will get started in just a little bit. If you have not already, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you are tuning in from. If you are a member of a DSA chapter, give us a shout of solidarity from your DSA chapter and let us know who all is represented here. All right, let's see, Middle Tennessee DSA, Austin DSA, welcome. North Alabama DSA, Miami DSA, Richmond, Akron, Ohio DSA, great friends of ours in Birmingham. Glad to see so many folks on the call. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. All right, welcome Charleston, welcome Durham, welcome Knoxville, welcome New York City, welcome North Central West Virginia. All right, we got a lot of folks coming in here. If you are just joining us, we're gonna get started in just a minute. Please drop your name and location in the chat. If you're a part of a DSA chapter, let us know that too. And our folks are going to be sharing the donation link for the Gofundme fundraiser also. This is a great time while we're getting everybody into the waiting room to make a little donation, help us on our way toward getting a big strike support check for the UMWA miners in Brookwood. We're going to be talking all about the strike in just a moment. Thank you everyone for joining us here. All right. All right, we are going to get started in just a minute here. My name is Chris Izor. I'm one of the co-chairs of Birmingham DSA. Along with North Alabama and Charleston, we will be your captains for the evening, making our way as we discuss this UMWA strike of the miners in Brookwood, Alabama, now in their 10th month of striking. So we will get started in, let's call it 1 minute here at 6:05, whenever it turns to 6:06.
Hey, Chris, if I can you rename yourself real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started in just a second right here. Our team is going to be dropping the fundraiser link in the chat. Yes, if you do make a donation, go ahead and give a shout out in the chat that you just donated. That would be excellent. We can get some good solidarity in the chat. All right, Jared has just posted that we are over 5,000 as we get started on this call. That's excellent. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started on the call here. So once again, my name is Chris Eisler. I am a co-chair of Birmingham DSA. I'm going to be walking us through the evening tonight. If you have heard about this, if you're a DSA member and you've heard about this event through your DSA chapter, that's excellent. You may have seen online, but we've opened up the fundraising page to go along with this fundraising panel and strike support effort. You can find the link to that fundraiser consistently throughout the chat through our evening. Feel free to visit there, make a donation. We'll talk about it throughout the call. But all right, so welcome everybody to this panel discussion and fundraising event called DSA for the Miners. Once again, my name is Chris Eisler. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Birmingham chapter of Democratic Socialists of America. I'll be moderating tonight's discussion and guiding us as we move through the night. I'm going to give a brief introduction to the strike and this DSA effort in particular to support. And then we'll hear from each of our speakers about the strike, talking about their experience, the context of this labor action within everything else going on within the labor movement here in Alabama, across the South and across the country. If you have any questions for the panel or for any of the speakers, you can share them using the Q&A, the questions function on Zoom, which will be along the bottom of your screen, or you can feel free to type them in the chat. We're going to keep track of them there as well. We'll be collecting some of the best questions, so make sure it's a good one. Once all the speakers have shared on their topic, we'll discuss those questions among the panel. All right, so I'm going to give just a very quick introduction to the strike, and then we're going to start to hear from the folks at the UMWA. So on April 1st, 2021, about 10 months ago, and right as the union election at the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama was coming to a close, over 1,000 UMWA mine workers began an unfair labor practice strike against Warrior Met Coal. Warrior Met has refused to bargain in good faith with the workers in the mines, who had made tremendous sacrifices to save their jobs and communities following the company's bankruptcy in 2016. They made those sacrifices with the assurances that when the company was back from the brink, they would be made whole at the next contract negotiation. Despite Warrior Met's continuing profits throughout the pandemic, they have refused to give the miners what they were owed. This strike has been long and difficult, but it's laid the foundation for the very visible strikes of last October and November at John Deere, Nabisco, Kellogg, and elsewhere. And the strike has continued long after the spark of Striketober has cooled. DSA chapters across the South and beyond, led by us in Birmingham, North Alabama, and Charleston, South Carolina, are coming together during the month of February to make it clear that the strike at Warrior Met is not forgotten, that the workers have our unending solidarity, and that we as DSA members and chapters across the country will show up for labor. So we want to hear more about this strike from the folks who have been experiencing it. So we're going to go first to Braxton Wright. And Braxton, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and talk to us about the experience of being on strike, and also what it was like working with Warrior Met before the strike.
Yes, my name is Braxton Wright. I'm a control room operator at number 5 prep plant. I've been in the mines about 17 years. I guess before the strike, or after the bankruptcy, the company, just the way they done things, the way they treated people, it just wasn't the same, as the old company. Not just the concessions, that we took in the contract during the bankruptcy, but this ridiculous 4-strike program they had, to where, no matter what, even if you had a doctor's excuse, they wouldn't accept it. They would give you a strike, and your 4th strike, you was terminated. It's just, it was tough before the strike, and we had no choice. We had to fight to get back just the dignity and respect from the company, not just the insurance and the pay and the benefits, but we just want them to recognize us as being important and being, the reason that they're making the profits.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like since the bankruptcy, and why it is that you and the other workers have voted and stuck with this strike for this long?
One of the things we wanted to get back was our insurance. We wanted to get our holidays back. So now we're only off 3 physical holidays, which is Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day. But so a lot of it's just the respect and the just the importance of the workers herself. Like I said, during the concessions, we took a $6 an hour pay cut, which, that's a lot in itself, but a lot of it, they took away the way they paid us our overtime also. It used to be like anything over 8 hours was overtime. Saturday was time and a half, and Sunday was double time. A lot of you guys, a lot of your mechanics that was out there on Sunday, that's where you made your money, was, your double time shifts doing, the maintenance that nobody else wanted to do. But, even like they took away, so even if we work an 8-hour shift, they'll pay us for 7.5 hours. Where are we supposed to go for our lunch break? We don't get to sit down and take a lunch. We get to take lunch. It's just wherever we happen to be. And then they're going to dock us, 30 minutes. Even if you don't get to sit down and take your break, they still dock you 30 minutes and won't pay you through lunch. It's just the lack of respect they have for their workers, just increased over the last couple of years, to the point to where it was just, we had no choice just to, to try to fight back, to try to gain some of the stuff we lost in the contract, but to try to gain, our respect as a coal miner back.
Yeah, can you tell us some more about what the folks that are on strike right now are feeling? Obviously it's been a long time, but how's everybody feeling? Do you think this has brought folks closer together?
Yes, it has brought, coal miners have always been close, but I think it weeded out the weak ones. For the majority of it, has brought us a lot closer together. And, morale's still high. We have our ups and downs, and then, small acts of, solidarity come in, to boost the morale right back up. Our Christmas event, which was a huge success, was just something that was just amazing if you could have seen. Just things like that, the solidarity, the donations from all over the world. even just, even if it's not a donation, just a solidarity message from, people like at Walmart or at other, small locations, that helps as much as, a lot of times just the messages of solidarity help as much as the monetary donations to, just keep that morale up, just to keep pushing and fighting, just a little bit longer.
Can you talk about some of the challenges that you, some of the challenges that come with a really long strike? I know that the challenges are a little bit different. The first month of the strike by the time that you get to the 10th month. Can you talk about what it's like for your family and all that stuff, sticking through the strike for so long?
Yeah, I mean, we've had to cut back on, a lot of things, maybe cable TV or, maybe going out to eat as much or. Yeah, we went it without our heating and air unit was actually down for 2 months, but luckily I found a way to come up with the money to replace it. Luckily I had the experience to replace it myself, so that saved me about $4,000. But yeah, it's just.
I know that you've had to find a little bit of work to supplement and keep everything going. Can you talk about what kind of work you do in the meantime?
Yes, I actually kind of applied for Amazon, kind of as a joke, and then they hired me. So I've been at Amazon in Bessemer since September, and I've been wearing my camo I wear my camo at least once a week, or some of the USW shirts that they made for us, or some form of union, attire every day. So I've been kind of, pushing the solidarity, message, more like telling them what, the union has done for us. And I think it's helped open a lot of their eyes that they need a union, to stop the way that Amazon treats them like little kids, and like a robot. But
that's really interesting to see the connection between the Amazon fight in Bessemer and the UMWA strike just down the road. Can you? I saw a question in the chat, and if you have questions, drop them there, and we'll get to them later. But how did you get into mining as a profession?
My grandfather was a miner for Black Diamond, and he actually lived in a Black Diamond camp. They moved to West Blockton, to live in a Black Diamond camp. My grandfather was actually injured in a mining accident and then passed away not long after. And my dad lied to him at about 17, and he went to work for the mines. And he worked there about 2 years before he got out, and which the Black Diamonds was kind of shutting down in the area anyway. But he decided it wasn't for him, and then I had the opportunity to go in, which me was a little different story. I actually went in through on the company side. I started off into quality control and was actually a company boss until the bankruptcy, when they got rid of all of the guys that was there long enough to draw a pension. They fired all of us. So when I had the chance to go back in 2017 as a control room operator for the UMWA, I said yes. I joined the union and went to run the control room.
That's a really incredible story. Seeing it in your family, and then going to the strike, or going to the mines, and then bringing your strike solidarity to the BHM1 facility in Bessemer. Any final thoughts about your experience on the strike before we move on to our next speaker?
It's a lot harder than what I was expecting it to be, as far as I wasn't expecting as much support, I guess, from the law enforcement and from the the talking heads of Alabama toward the company. I was kind of maybe expecting more support toward the workers instead of toward the companies. And I think that shocked me and a lot. Me as a used to be Republican, I think that a lot of the ones that voted Republican has opened their eyes to see that maybe people care so much about workers as they do companies and corporations.
Right. Yeah, I think it seems like the strike has definitely brought a lot of that out. Well, thank you so much, Braxton, for sharing about your experience in the strike. So next, we are going to go to Larry Spencer, the International Vice President for District 20. And Larry, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like leading a strike, just in general, but particularly for a strike that's been going on for this long?
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes. Also, sorry, can
okay.
you just can you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, my name's Larry Spencer, and I apologize for the video. I'm sitting in a car really waiting to go into another meeting, and I thought I'd get on here for a short, quick, just a quick time, and before I went into this Labor Council meeting. But my name's Larry Spencer. I'm the Vice President of the United Mine Workers in Alabama. And I'm the person that's in charge, one of the people that's in charge of this strike here in Alabama. And it's been real tough on all of the people. They're 10 months is a long time to be on strike. And, these guys have really stayed strong. We've had a few that's crossed the picket lines, but as a whole, we've kept the biggest majority of them have stayed strong and, with solidarity and fighting hard to keep everybody going. It's something that, you never, when we started this, I don't think anybody expected it to be a 10-month strike or longer. We expected it to probably last a couple of months and get everybody back to work. And this starting February 1, we're starting on our 11th month, actually. To break it down, I think it's 312 or 13 days today. And so that's a long time for these guys to be on strike. But with the help of the auxiliaries, we've got two different, or actually four, but it's two that's formed from four different unions. The auxiliaries have been doing a good job of keeping the pantries going and doing toy drives for Christmas, and all the other unions have really pitched in. We like Braxton said, we did the Christmas during December, and to see those children get the toys that they wanted, even with their parents on strike, was really something. So and it all came from other unions and people that's chipped in that supported us. I think Braxton mentioned the fact that we've got letters and support and money from people from Walmart, from IBEW, from all over the place, just money pouring in that's really helped these guys. Now, they are getting a strike check, from the United Mine Workers. It's $800 every 2 weeks. But every other week they get another check that is coming from the people that's donating to try to keep this going, and it's been averaging about $200 each time that we do the donation check, and so that's helped a lot. And just to keep these people going and trying to get their what they've asked for. They hadn't asked for a lot. They just asked to get back what they lost in 2016. So just wish this company would just do what they need to do and quit greasing their pockets with the money and let the people that go down there and earn the money, mining the coal and everything, let them get what they deserve back. But
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really been a tough strike.
You mentioned folks that are greasing their pockets with money who aren't doing the work. I know that y'all have had to take the strike beyond the picket line in Brookwood and travel to Wall Street and beyond. Can you talk about what that's like to bring the strike action beyond Alabama?
Yeah, we've kept people in New York pretty regular in front of BlackRock. BlackRock is the biggest investor that this company has, and we've kept people standing in front of their door that's had a informational picket line about what's going on here in Alabama, so that we can keep the BlackRock CEO and executive boards and stuff of BlackRock, try to keep them understanding that, if they'd step up and tell this company to, get a contract, they would, because they are the biggest investor out there of this company. So, but I know there's people there. I think we've got like 17 people up there right now that goes to their door every morning when they open, and they stay there until they close every evening in their camouflage shirts with "We Are One" on them, and making sure that they see the coal miners out there. And it's not just been New York. We've been to California, been to Boston, been to Texas. We've carried it anywhere that we thought that investor was that would help us to get this thing settled.
How confident are you now that you all are going to be able to hold this and get a contract that you all deserve? I know it's been a long time, but how are y'all feeling on the line now?
We're feeling good. It's been a long time, but when you stay out this long, you get weary. But we're going to be here until there is a contract. We're not leaving. They thought they got rid of us for a while, and they found out we're still here, and we're going to be here until this contract's settled. And we're hoping that it'll be soon. So this is the longest strike in history in Alabama, and there's been longer strikes other places, and we're fixing to pass a couple of those. I think the Pittston strike, I think it was a little over 10 months, and we're coming up on probably going past it. But those are records we really didn't want to break. We was wanting to get this thing settled without doing that. But we are confident that we're going to win this strike.
And we're confident that you're going to win it too, and that's why we're here tonight. Just last question, Larry. Thanks so much again for being able to join us. I know you're in the middle of being a leader in the strike, and being a labor leader in Alabama. But for folks who are on the call and beyond, who want to support the strike, or want to support strikes in their area, what do you recommend what action do you recommend they take to make sure that workers know that they have their support?
Just showing solidarity means a lot. Just when you see people on strike, blow your horn and let them know that you support them, and stop by and let them know that you're there to support them. The money means a lot because, when you're on strike, you're doing everything you can to pay your power bill and buy groceries and keep your family going. So a little bit of donation always helps, and it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $5 or $20. It takes a lot to run a strike, for sure. So the donations helps quite a bit, but the solidarity means a tremendous amount. Just seeing the people every morning, we're out at the picket line and people coming by and blowing the horn. Of course, some of them blow the horn and tell us we're number one, and we don't need that type of support. We need support blowing our horn and telling us, hey, we got your back, and let the companies know that the workers are tired and we're not going to keep putting up with the way the companies are treating the workers out there. It's time for labor to take this country back over and let these companies that are, abusing their labor and stuff know that we're all going to support each other, and we're going to get this country back to where it should be. Because that's who made this country. The people in labor is the one that made the country. It's not the people that are rich and everything. They didn't make it. It's the ones that did it with their hands and built the bridges and the buildings and mined the coal and put the oil wells together and pumped the gas and cleaned your windshield and stuff. That's who made this country. So just let everybody know that you got their back. That's the main thing.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight. And thanks to everybody who's joining the call tonight for joining the call and showing your solidarity. You can see in the chat, we're going to keep pumping this Gofundme fundraiser that will be raising this money for these miners in Brookwood to make sure that everybody is able to pay their power bill, stay one day longer on the strike, and get a fair contract. So next up, we're going to go to Jacob Morrison, the host of the Valley Labor Report. So Jacob is an expert in labor in Alabama, but is also has a particular insight into the context of some of the strike breaking tactics that the company has been using. So let me let's make Jacob here. Yeah, so Jacob, first introduce yourself, and then tell us a little bit about what this strike has looked like from the perspective of some of the companies and the state's actions to try and bring it down.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute. When we did our fundraiser last year, I had somebody, Max Alvarez, he's a good friend of mine, And he told me that he's a night owl and he can't be up really early in the morning. And so I asked him to come on to a 5 a.m. slot. And he said he'd do anything for the workers. So that's kind of the attitude that I try to take with me, is I'll do anything for the workers. And of course, this isn't nearly as bad as being on at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate y'all for putting this together. DSA has really been a strong ally of the miners in this fight and of workers across the South and across the country during this time of workers fighting back, like Larry was talking about. I appreciate Braxton's testimony, his bravery, and the fight of all the other miners down there in Brookwood. And I appreciate Larry's work doing all that he can to keep folks together in a context that really is not easy. What the UMWA has down in Brookwood, I think, is really something special. A group of hundreds of folks in a rural community in Alabama that are willing to put their livelihoods on the line and for so long for one another. It takes work to make that happen, and I know that the folks down there are working really hard. And so I was asked to talk about the strike-breaking tactics that the company had been using, and the state had been using, the context that this is taking place in. And of course, this is something that we've been talking a lot about on the show, and I'm happy to do that. And no one, no one needs to be told, of course, that the miners have been facing a hard fight. We all know that, but maybe some folks don't know some of the specifics. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Since the strike began, of course, the company has been bringing in scabs, and that's a polite word for them, I think. Class traders, scum, bottom feeders, bootlickers, those are all also applicable. Bringing in scabs is one of the chief ways that companies will attempt to break strikes. When workers strike, they withhold their labor, and so if you can bring in some spineless dogs to make up for some of the lost labor, then it hurts the company less. And I believe scabs, together with the company, are engaged in a form of theft, stealing jobs from the rightful laborers and stealing value from the community that they are flown into. And not only this, but to twist the knife and to entice more scabs, they're often compensated more highly than the workers before they went on the strike, and that's the case here. But as Brother Cecil Roberts said, the international UMWA president, the only reason that they're getting that much money is because the union that preceded them. And even though they're actively working to undermine its presence, and if the scabs in the company are successful, those wages will go down, the benefits will disappear, and the unchecked greed of the New York hedge funders that own this mine will create, once again, more and more unsafe working environment. And, these New York hedge funders, they're the ones that, by some mysterious magic, to paraphrase Big Bill Haywood, even though they never set foot in the mines, they didn't find the coal, they didn't mine the coal, but now it's theirs to do with what they will. And not only is the coal's theirs, but the laborers also, and with no pushback at all if the scabs in the company win. Because the union is what has allowed workers to be able to make a good living, to make a safe living, to be able to come home and see their families. Without the union, miners wouldn't be able to do that. And that's the future that awaits the scabs if they win with the company. And it's a lived reality that many in the country face. It's a future with the boss in total control, with meager wages, with no benefits, with no quality of life, with no time off, things like this. But of course, the workers, they face more than the mere fact of scabs coming in. Another factor that's even bigger than the scabs, in my estimation, is that, like Larry said, this is a fight against Wall Street and worldwide hedge fund managers. Warrior Met is owned in chunks no larger than 13% by several hedge fund groups, each owning billions, trillions of dollars in assets. And And so this gives Warrior Met the ability to leverage these assets against the losses that the strike is causing them, which is substantial. According to one of the attorneys for the UMWA, if you look at Warrior Met's revenue from 2019 and compare it to 2021, it was down by $400 million. But what's 400 million when you have billions? That makes it all the more important for the people that are supposed to be fighting for us, the Republicans who say that they love coal miners and the Democrats who say that they love unions, to actually fight for us, to stand up for these miners and to bring to bear the power of the state for the workers and not for the boss. The company has also inspired violence against them by the scabs. People have been hit numerous times on the picket line, and I've heard of at least one occasion where the miners have been shot at. And of course, these are Alabama coal miners, and they don't exactly take these things lying down. A few of the scabs have seen their windows smashed in retaliation for being run into by the scabs, and I think that's completely justified. I think that most people would as well. But this has been used along with the fact that scabs and the bosses have had their feelings hurt to issue unconstitutional restrictions on the right of these workers to peaceably assemble. First, they were limited to 10 to 11 picketers, then to 6, and then they banned the practice outright, and now they allow 2 people on the picket line. And we can see how this restriction can be bad for morale, but also for community support. You know, we can't count on the news to tell the truth or to focus on worker struggles, so we have to do it ourselves, and this makes it all the more difficult for people to know what's happening in their own communities. And this isn't the end of the bad things that the state of Alabama has done. They've also offered up our taxpayer-funded colleges to badly train out-of-state scabs. They've offered up the police force as personal escorts for the scabs, even ticketing community members for driving the speed limit in front of these escorts. And now the legislature is moving forward on a bill that would further restrict the right of working people to picket. 11 leaders of the UMWA and the AFL-CIO were arrested for blocking entrance to one of the mines several months ago. And if this bill were to have been law at this time, they would have had a mandatory holding time of 24 hours after arrest. And if they were found guilty, they would have been charged with a felony and had a minimum of 30 days in prison. So we know that our people in Alabama aren't the only ones facing these things. Injunctions have been issued against unions in the past year for as little as a worry of a thought of potential violence on a picket line and hurt feelings. We've seen these so-called anti-riot bills all across the country as well. But as I wrap up with maybe a little bit brighter, the repression isn't the only thing that the strike has in common with workers all across the country. I believe that you could rightfully say that they kicked off a year of labor unrest, a year of labor protest, a year of worker activism that is really hasn't been paralleled in the last 20 years, at least. If you look in the last 100 years, it starts to, it's not as good as it could be, but certainly there was a different feeling. You had Striketober. You had John Deere workers winning a 20% raise over 5 years. You had staff writers at the New Yorker magazine winning a 40% raise. You had grad workers in New York winning a 60% raise. And and that's just 3. There was lots of other people who won lots of things last year, and I believe that the UMWA will be the cherry on top after they win. After they win a good and a fair contract. And against all these odds, I think that the resolve of the miners is made even more clear. And I also think that this backdrop makes it all the more important to, like Larry said, to continue doing important things like this, to support these workers in whatever way that we can and whatever way that they ask, compared to the sacrifices that they've made for themselves, for their families, and for their communities, and for the people that are going to come after them. Because that's one of the things that unions do, is that we're fighting for people that we don't know, that haven't even been born yet. And that's one of the things that I believe are keeping these people going, is that they want the folks who come after them to have a good life. And so I think that doing things like this when we're asked to, and where we can, even when we're not asked, I think that it's the least that we can do. So that's everything that I had prepared.
All right. Thank you so much, Jake. Just one final question. we don't just in the last minute here. People don't think a lot. People don't necessarily think of the South or Alabama in particular as a particularly hotbed of labor activity, but we certainly have seen a lot of it here. Where is a place that people can learn more about labor activity and labor issues in the South, maybe on Saturday mornings?
Yeah, well, like I said at the beginning, I host the Valley Labor Report. It is a union talk radio program that is run by everybody that's involved in the project is a member of a union. We are sponsored by unions in the area and national and international federations, and we talk about stuff like this every Saturday morning from 9:30 to 11 on YouTube, Facebook, and on 92.5 FM in Huntsville. So we just had a good conversation last week with a professor from the University of Colorado about the history of mass picketing and the way that it has been that the state has really cracked down on it. In some ways, the repression that the folks in Alabama are facing isn't new because even union membership was illegal at one point. But in other ways, it is new because in a certain point, there was even a Supreme Court ruling, part of an opinion in the Supreme Court, talked about how it was not legitimate to issue an injunction for a few instances of assault, right? Because there was some amount of disturbance to be expected from a labor dispute. That was just the opinion that the highest court in the land in this country had at one point. But now you have people retaliate for getting run over. You have people that get their feelings hurt because they were being called a scab or other mean names. And you have courts that are willing to restrict people's right to protest, people's right to assemble, people's right to speak. And, so we've really come a long way from where we were in the middle of the 20th century when workers had more freedoms, I think, by and large. And so I hope that we are beginning on a path with the wins that we saw in 2021 to where we have those freedoms again, to where we can win more of these material things, like the folks at John Deere and like the folks at Warrior Met are fighting for. So.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for telling us all about that. And again, I will definitely endorse the Valley Labor Report on Saturday mornings and several times on social media channels between then and there. But moving on now, we're going to talk to Haeden Wright next. Haeden is the president of one of the UMWA Auxiliaries. And Haeden's going to tell us a little bit about how to organize community support during a strike. So Haeden, take it away.
My name is Haeden Wright, and I'm the president for the UMWA Auxiliary for the goals 2035 and 2368. So we've been on strike here at Warrior Met for 313 days now. So this is the longest strike in Alabama history. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about solidarity and what that actually means when you're on the front lines and what you could do locally for strikes. And then what you could do when strikes aren't close to you. So there's several things you could do. A lot of these have been talked about. Just things as simple as going by and blowing the horn. Stop, and even if you have 10 or 15 minutes to pick up a sign and just talk to workers. I think a lot of people are afraid to stop on a picket line. We want to tell you what's happening. We want you to know why we're fighting. And it's easy to cross a picket line. That's a coward's way out. If you decide to cross a picket line, and we've had some this past week. We've had a couple across. You're telling me you made it through Christmas, you made it through the holidays, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to go back to a company that mistreated you, a company that made it to where you only saw your families a few hours a week. So you're valuable. So I think it goes back to having self-respect. If you respect yourself, then you're going to know that I'm worth more than this, and it's not okay that you treat me this way. And I want my kids to know that it's not okay for people to treat them this way. That sometimes you have to suffer, and sometimes things are hard, but it's what's right. And what's right's not always easy. So what we've really been doing in the auxiliary is doing things like this, trying to get the message out about the strike and what we're doing here, because there's such a misconception about when you say coal, a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, well, green energy, you're going to lose your jobs anyway. What people don't understand is here, Warrior met coal, mine's metallurgical coal. So what they do is they use it to produce steel. So you use metallurgical coal for coke, which then you turn into steel. So for green energy to happen, if you want solar panels, windmills, infrastructure, right now with the technology we have, it's a product that's really needed. And right now, it's actually at a peak. So Warrior Met is losing a ton of money by not having these guys here. And the company is actually offering bonuses to these scabs coming in at $1,500 a month. They're paying them $25 an hour. This is what they put out in their own messaging. So you're telling me you can pay a scab that, but you won't put it in a union contract. Well, what that means is that right now, as we're fighting, you're reaping the benefits because you are too afraid to stand up for yourself. We're fighting for you and for us because let's be honest, we're going to have this fight and a few of those guys will still get to stay and reap the benefits. So that's kind of where we're at here. And with the auxiliary, we do pantry bags every week. So we make about 200 pantry bags for families. So we do that every week. We feed families at the rallies. Either we prepare food or we have it prepared locally and then we serve it to members. So we do that every Wednesday at our solidarity rallies. They're held at Brookwood Ballpark at 5 o'clock. They're open to any supporters who'd like to come out. Then on top of that, we also pick up donations like Grace Klein. We provide baby items like diapers. Guys, you would be shocked at how many young kids we have. I have a 7-year-old and I have a 1-year-old. My 1-year-old has spent her whole life just about on strike. She spent her whole life at rallies and at the union hall. It's what she knows. So we have a lot of kids that were born during the strike that is all they've known from their family. So having that formula, which is expensive, having things like diapers, baby wipes, or things that before and people take for granted that sometimes at the end of the month, we don't have the money for. So having that pantry there to help those families is huge. Things like shampoo, conditioner, a razor because you're going for a job interview or you don't have it at home and you've got to work. I mean, that's the kind of thing we provide. We also take locally clothing donations. We had people donate racks and donate clothing. We have it sorted by sizes so people can come in and get their kids clothes because as the weather changes, we don't have the money just to go out and buy new clothing. So for Christmas, that was one of the big things that we did. It wasn't just toys. One of the biggest things people asked for was shoes and jackets. So at that event, not only did they get those toys, everybody that attended that event, their kid got a jacket. Their kid got a pair of shoes. I mean, it's those things that through solidarity we've been able to do. And that's incredible. So to be able to say after 10 months, we can still feed families every week. We can still make sure that babies have diapers, that babies have formula. That's only through working class solidarity. That's only through union solidarity. And that's something that if you decide to cross the picket line, if you're a scab, you don't have that. And that lesson and that love and support is more valuable than any amount of money. Knowing that I can lean on a brother or sister or a union sibling and I can say, hey, I need help. And they're going to be there for me. We have similar experiences and we're willing to stand together and fight together through the good times and the bad times. Because I can tell you the group of the auxiliary is amazing. Those are my sisters. I love them. We do more than just auxiliary stuff together. Our kids, my daughter calls them her strike cousins because they're together all the time. The union is a family. and you don't turn your back on family, you fight for your family. And that's what we're ready to do here for as long as it takes.
Awesome. I am extremely fired up here. We need to keep moving on through the program. But thank you so much, Haeden, for your leadership on the auxiliary. And thank you so much for demonstrating what solidarity looks like for the rest of us. If you don't follow Haeden on Twitter, you definitely should. I'll get one of our folks to drop it in the chat here. But it's a great way to keep up with some of the daily ins and outs of what's going on in Brookwood on the strike. But next, we're going to move along outside of Alabama, and I'd say a very special guest, Kim Kelly, who's been covering some of the strike this whole time. I think starting by accident by being down here for Amazon. But Kim, if you can tell us about covering the strike, in particular about why this strike, even though it's been really long, hasn't been something that everybody knows about.
Sure. Like you said, I kind of stumbled upon it by accident because I was already there covering what was going on with Amazon. And then I heard, oh, there's some coal miners on strike, a few miles down the road. And I was like, okay, well, this will be the next big thing. Let me go get some donuts. Let me show up and, make some friends, see what's going on. And, I met just a couple of guys out on the line. That was back when they could have a picket line before the courts got involved. So I met these guys, heard their story, and I was like, wow, this is huge. This is so interesting. I need to come back. I need to find out more about this. And so I did. And I kept coming back. I think I've been back maybe, I don't even know, 5 or 6 times. They can't get rid of me at this point. I'm like the pet Yankee. But, part of what's kept me coming back again and again, and hopefully again, and then hopefully again once we win, is just how intricate and complex the story is. Like, I mean, already you're starting out with a group of rural working class blue collar workers in Alabama who are standing up against these corporate interests, against these coal bosses who are wringing out every iota of blood and sweat from their bones. Obviously, you want to write about that as a labor reporter. Then you add like the community aspect and the political aspect. Like when I first showed up, like I'm not from the South, I'm from somewhere rural. I stick out enough there. And I was like, okay, coming out here, like a bunch of tattoos, clearly didn't vote for Trump, whatever. I'm going to see what this community is like and see if I can talk to people. And people were so warm and so welcoming. And even if we didn't see eye to eye on certain political issues, that kind of fell by the wayside because of what was happening and the import of their mission. And because, if you want to support workers, you support workers. You don't put caveats on there. And, these guys and women and people have become so close to my heart. This story, I've been following it since April. It's February. Like Larry said, I think we're on month 11. Pittston is shaking. And one thing that's driven me kind of up the wall over these past 11 months, 10 and a half, 11 months, is that often I'm kind of one of the only media voices like beating this drum. And this is just to say, we've had the Valley Labor Report has obviously been all over it because they know more than I ever will about this conflict in this area. We've had other reporters have written about it. Like it's kind of every time there's a bigger event, like when they go to Wall Street or when there's a big Christmas event or when there's like a big happening, then there's a little bit more attention, but then it kind of falls off again. But the strike is still happening and the story is still developing. And, I feel like it's been a massive privilege and honor to be able to spend so much time following the story and getting to know people and like texting with Haeden at midnight and getting to see her kids grow. I've seen, most of Avery and Everly's little lives by now. And that's not something you get to do with every labor story, but there's just something about this one that I really wish that more folks were able to see what I see. And maybe not get so hung up on like Haeden said, the coal part of things. That is a hard pill for some folks to swallow when it comes to supporting these workers. But as Haeden said, it's not just black and white. And like I said, solidarity means solidarity, not, well, I don't approve of your job. I don't like what you're doing. So does that mean you deserve to suffer? No. I feel like we have political differences. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you haven't talked to these folks, so how do you know? It's it's been a really learning experience, and I wish there was more attention. I think we're getting more attention. What you guys are doing with this is wonderful. The DSA folks in Birmingham and surrounding areas have been so great and showed up and been so supportive. And it really is this kind of this massive community effort, right? But our community is so much bigger than Brookwood. It's like a, you know, it's a big working class union family, and we're all doing our best. And I'm just so grateful I get to be a little itty bitty part of it.
Yeah. So Kim, you're in Philadelphia, right? So I guess, one thing that we'll talk about in just a little bit, but is, how do you show solidarity from afar for, when workers are on strike? I think, especially as, the Striketober, like visible labor actions last fall, but also as like Starbucks organizing, seemingly like it's closer and closer. Not in Alabama yet, but if you're interested and you work at Starbucks, obviously get in touch with us here at DSA. We'll find you the right folks to talk to. But there's this question of how do you support people on strike? How do you support workers from afar when they're facing challenges like this? So, we know that there's, if there's a strike fund, we can donate to it. But beyond donating, like, what does that mean? You've done a lot of coverage of some of this stuff. So what are you hearing from these various labor actions?
Well, as we've mentioned, donating is huge. Material support is how we keep things going. But something that I think maybe, and Braxton mentioned this, and Haeden mentioned this, the idea of solidarity kind of as a verb, as showing up for people, even if you're far away. So many of us spend a lot of time, like calling myself out, but a lot of us spend a lot of time on social media and connecting with people in that way. And it might seem like a tweet doesn't matter, but it really can brighten somebody's day. They can help spread the word. Something that really stuck out to me last time I was down there. I interviewed a wonderful man named Greg, and he was talking about how hard it's been seeing kind of the hate that he and the other miners get on Facebook, like on local Facebook communities. And maybe, not everyone spends that much time on Facebook anymore, but a lot of people do. And people are really mean to the striking miners. Like, they don't understand. And just finding ways to meet them where they're at and support these folks and show them, like, people are watching, you're not alone, we really do care, no one's forgotten about you. That's the biggest thing. Sending a letter to the union halls, sending, making some art. I've seen some really wonderful art going around on Twitter that folks have made to support the miners. Like, I don't know, it's like, what do you do if your best friend lives across the country from you and they're in the middle of a crisis? You find every way you can to reach out and let them know you still love them. It can be that personal here, or it can be as little as, sending a tweet or retweeting like this fundraiser. That's just free.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the final question is, if we say that we wanted to learn a little bit more about unions and just labor organizing in this country, is there maybe some kind of book that we could turn to learn a little bit about like labor history or anything like that?
I should be holding it, right? It's back there somewhere. But I did write a book about all of this, and Haeden's in it, and Braxton's in it, a bunch of our friends down there in it. But yeah, I wrote a book called Fight Like Hell, The Untold History of Labor in America. Untold History of American Labor. I should know this by now. And it focuses on, it's kind of like a people's history of labor in this country, focusing specifically on women and Black folks, people of color, disabled folks, incarcerated workers, sex workers, everyone who kind of somehow gets left out of the story when the history books are written. I wanted to write that book, and I did, and it comes out in April. And I tweet about it a lot, so you can follow me on Twitter for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for joining us from Philadelphia, but for sharing about your experience covering the strike here and sort of connecting it to everything else that's going on in labor. So I just very briefly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about DSA's role in supporting this particular strike, but also just supporting any kind of labor action, in whatever neighborhood your DSA DSA chapters in. This particular strike has been a little challenging for our chapter to support, not because of ideology or anything like that, but because of the picket injunctions. That's made it, it makes it a little bit difficult to show up on the picket line and support in person. The Delta variant, and COVID has, I think, changed a lot of things for a lot of chapters trying to, show in-person support. But we've tried to stay supportive with, with mutual aid support, with funding, and donations where we can. But as we're into this, the new 2022 year, us and Charleston DSA in particular, in North Alabama, started to talk with each other and say, we had all visited the strike at some time or another, and saying, like, what can we do to try and bring a stronger DSA voice behind this? And DSA is still also experimenting with, like, what does strike support look like, particularly over a longer period of time, particularly not necessarily with a lot of in-person support. What does it look like beyond simply setting up a donation fund? And so part of this has been that we've been reaching out to DSA chapters across the South, large and small, trying to get folks to first understand more about this strike, because as Kim said, it's not been something that has really been covered outside of very dedicated labor media. So first is to share and educate everybody else about the strike, particularly people who are interested in labor, or maybe they're interested in other issues that are centered around the working class, but maybe they're not super familiar with labor. As Jacob said, part of the legislation in the state house in Alabama right now, and it's coming to a state house near you, is designed to criminalize protests, in the wake of the George Floyd uprising, and specifically targeting, protesters against, anti-racist or racist policing, anti-racist protesters. But as it turns out, that has a much wider impact than just a specific group of organizers. It impacts everybody in the working class, who organizes and flexes the power that we all have, which is our strength, our solidarity, and our numbers. So I think for DSA, in a particular, in a chapter that's nearby a labor action, or for a DSA member or a chapter who knows about an action from afar, educating each other, sending letters of solidarity, sending donations. If there's not a place to send donations, making sure that there is a place to send donations. All of those things are great, but as we always say in working class organizing, is our strength comes from each other. Our strength comes from our numbers, and our strength comes from our connections and solidarity with each other. So as much as we can, we've tried to reach out to chapters all across the South, and we're getting a lot of love and solidarity. Everyone, obviously, again, feel free to drop your name and location in the chat. We love seeing the solidarity from afar. But right now, we're going to take a quick look through some of these questions, and I will put them to some of our folks who are still with us on the panel here. Question from Morgan in Alabama. What was the messaging from management to the union in 2016 around the acquisition by the private equity firms? That seems to have been the impetus for the bankruptcy and the pay and the benefit cuts. Are there any lessons in that process for workers facing a similar situation? Maybe that's a question for Braxton, if you can answer. What were you hearing? What was the perspective that y'all had as the company was giving you the runaround with the bankruptcy?
Yeah, it was something that was kind of forced on us by the bankruptcy judge. They said you would either accept the concessions and the contract that the bankruptcy judge pretty much come up with, or that we just go out without a union. so we, yeah, yeah, not just concessions, but the retirees was going to lose their pensions, the bankruptcy was, going to put them out free and clear. That meant retirees would lose their health insurance card, which is one of the things, that coal miners worked so hard for so many years was their, insurance and their pensions. If it wasn't for the UMWA went to DC and fighting constantly, the retirees would have lost their pensions. But, it was just to see a judge, just so blatantly, side with the company and not against the workers, to accept this, less than par contract, it's just, unacceptable. But, the company made promises that the next contract, if business picked up, if things were better, economy was better, that they would, they'd make it right with the contract. And then when it come time for the contract, they actually wanted us to take, more concessions. So, that's when we voted to go on strike, and they come up with this little pitiful, contract that they put together, and we voted like 97%, to decline that first offer, and we've been fighting them ever since, and we're going to fight them one day longer than they can hold out.
Hell yeah, solidarity. We're going to hold out. Another question here is, are you allowed to picket? I know that we've talked a little bit about some of the injunctions, but I think Haeden, you've given me a pretty good rundown of the injunctions. So we'll send it to you. Can you tell us about what the process of the picket has been like so far?
Yeah, so we've actually been facing injunctions since the very first few weeks of the strike. The company tried to go unlimited 2 pickets right from the get-go. We actually were able to get to 6, and it increased at one time to 10. It's been back and forth constantly with them trying to suppress our right to assemble. That's all it is. They're actually breaking your constitutional rights. They're taking those away. And it got to the point in November, the company had put out an edited video that the media firm that Kim had posted in the chat, had put out for them, and tried to paint it like violence had increased in the past couple of weeks. The problem is those videos actually were from the beginning of the strike. Those weren't new videos, and the way they were portrayed didn't actually show the entirety of the events that had taken place. So in November, a judge actually placed a temporary restraining order, so not an injunction, an actual TRO, not just on individuals that were identified as having done something, let's say, on the picket line, something that hurt the company's feelings. You got to get her out. So what that did, they said that no UMWA member could picket, and not only UMWA members, but it also included supporters, the auxiliary, and anyone who would have been in coercion with us. So, for example, if you talk to me and you're like, hey, can we go picket? And I would have said, yeah, that's great. Here, you could have also been held in contempt of court. So what it did is it completely shut down the picket lines. So we were back and forth in court trying to deal with that. In December, they said, okay, well, y'all can have 2 people per picket line, but only where the company says you can be, which is 300 yards away, not feet, yards. So 300 yards away from any entrance, any exit, or any place where Warrior Met does business. So again, basically eliminating your right to assemble and your right to free speech. That was eventually done away with. Now we can have people in the picket lines, like Jacob, I think, mentioned, we can have 2. But the judge says we're not allowed to have a vehicle. Our picket lines stretch 120 miles. So you're telling me you want 2 people on a picket line in places with no cell reception, to where we've already been shot at. We've already had people run down with trucks, but you're going to put 2 people there alone with no cell reception and no vehicle. So what we have been doing is we have pickets actually now set up in Brookwood to where we're outside those injunction limits and can have more people there. So we do have pickets going. So if you drive through Brookwood, we'll see UMWA there. We're back. We're not going anywhere. We have solidarity rallies every Wednesday together there in Brookwood on the ball field to where there's anywhere from 200 to 500 of us there. So the company tried to do didn't work. It didn't divide us. We're still here standing strong, and we're ready to play the game and fight back for as long as it takes.
All right. Thank you, Haeden. I'm so sorry that it sounds like not everybody's having a good time on your end. But is Jacob with us? Jacob, I had a question. Okay, I had a question. Let's bring you so that everyone can see you here. All right. So Jacob, you talk on your show a lot about the how little support the miners in Brookwood have gotten from any political officials, particularly political officials in our state who like to spend a lot of taxpayer money filing lawsuits about vaccines or stopping the steal or things like that. Can you talk about just this big political vacuum of no support for the miners here in Alabama and kind of what that means, you know?
Yeah, well, the vacuum is huge from people who, I mean, you've got talk radio hosts are a dime a dozen, right? And basically they're all conservative. And I listen to talk radio pretty regularly, and I keep up with the scene in Alabama, I think. And I am not aware of a single instance of one talk radio host in the state other than me supporting these workers. The most that I've seen is a tepid agreement when I have been on one of their segments where they said, yeah, that sounds pretty bad. Company sounds like it's bad. Hope they win. And that's it. That's like it. Nothing else. No follow up when they're on their own, And that was only one segment that I heard that tepid agreement from this person that I'm thinking of. And they spend their time. I mean, I wrote an article for Labor Notes kind of talking about how much time these people spend on cancel culture or free speech or things like this. And it's not First Amendment stuff. It's not the government suppressing speech. It's always like people are sad that they got criticized or that this private platform isn't wanting to publish their work. And which is, that's fine. We can talk about that. And maybe that's valid and maybe it's not. But what we're looking at in Brookwood is legitimate state suppression of speech. And nobody cares about it. As far as these talk radio hosts are concerned, these politicians are concerned, they don't care about it. And then, and they spend their time on their radio shows defending a half-billionaire LA podcaster from, and they won't mention anything about coal miners in their own state. And they like to, they say that they're, I'm the one supporting the Alabama working class. And you haven't talked to a worker in Alabama your whole life, probably. The only people you talk to are business owners. And it's incredibly frustrating. And the same can be said for the politicians. I've tried to reach out to politicians. There was one, I think it was Jerry Carl. I reached out to his office. It was one of the Congress people, and it wasn't Mo Brooks. And he said, I don't interfere in private negotiations. And literally the next week after he told me this in an email, he issued a statement about how it's bad that that this corporation is firing workers for not adhering to their vaccine mandate, which is like, again, we could talk about that, and that's a separate discussion, and like maybe that's fine, maybe it isn't. But the hypocrisy, it's so strange that they're so willing to it's not really strange because they're willing to talk about these other things because they don't impact the people that support their programs, the people that write the check for their campaigns, and the people that advertise on their programs. Talking about whether or not Joe Rogan is being criticized doesn't hurt them. Talking about coal miners in Alabama that are actually fighting for themselves and their communities and their coworkers and their families, that's something that can inspire other people to action. That's something that can actually affect the bottom line of places like Warrior Met and their owners. So, it is very frustrating though, the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also, it demonstrates again, what we talk about in DSA a lot, which is just that, when it comes to the working, or we don't, not even just DSA, we talk about it, over throughout the labor movement, throughout working class organizing, is that there are two sides. There are workers and the bosses. Like there are two sides, for us as socialists. There's the working class and there's the capitalist class, the owning class. And it's pretty clear which side the politicians are on, and it's pretty clear in service of which class those sort of talking head interests are. But we are going to go live to Braxton, who I believe has his union vote in hand for BHM1 at the Bessemer Amazon warehouse. So let's bring Braxton up to the front now and tell us what's going on, Braxton.
Yes, today we got our ballots in the mail, and I'm gonna go ahead and sign mine real quick. If we can get it to focus in. I'm not sure if it'll focus enough.
All right. Braxton has voted union yes for the Bessemer and Amazon warehouse to be represented by RWDSU.
Yes, they said unions stand with unions. All together we are one union at the end of the day. We may have different titles, we may have different jobs, but at the end, we're all working class and we're all the same union.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for saving that moment for us here. Let's go to Kim for one final question. And Kim, the question is, this was from a chat earlier. It was a question about the Pittston strike. The question was, are they coming down on hard with fines? And I believe the answer is that there's not a fine, but can you just talk a little bit about the Pittston strike and sort of the comparison here? No pressure.
Oh boy, just one of the most important strikes in UMWA history. I wish I could grab my book and page through real quick. But well, like we said, the difference is they were getting fined to hell and back. And here, the way the injunctions are set up, it's more like the threat of a fine. Oh man. So a few months ago in the summer, after a number of UMWA leaders, including International President Cecil Roberts, they sat down and blocked the entrance to the mines. And it was like a civil disobedience situation. It was planned. There was no violence or anything, but they all got arrested and they got sent to Tuscaloosa County Jail overnight, which seemed like it was much less fun than the blocking part. But after that, one of the many injunctions that came out after that, the one that came after that specific incident, it noted like new stipulations of like $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 fines for people that engage in that activity. And I think it specifically mentioned, or like basically mentioned, the leaders of that who had done that. So it's less, I think in Piston it was like, okay, this is happening. Here it's more like, well, if you don't behave, we'll slap you with a fine. A lot of the folks who've been called in for contempt of court, like, that's not cheap, that's not free, that's time and that's money and that's fines. It's more of like, essentially Warrior Met has been using their cozy relationship with the business community in Brookwood and the courts and the cops and basically all of the anti-worker interests locally to use the threat of financial ruin and jail time to try and keep these folks in line. Obviously it hasn't worked because we're on month 11, but that's kind of the difference. It was a sort of a sure thing back then, but right now it's more of a, well, I would hate to do this, but that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for that little quick history comparison. So with that, folks, I think we are going to start to close us out for this DSA for the Miners event. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined the call and stuck it out all the way through the end. We sincerely appreciate the solidarity. I know that all of our panelists do, but certainly we in Birmingham DSA, I can speak for our chapter for sure. The solidarity that we've gotten from across the South and across the country from everybody, DSA folks and beyond, has been really great in these last couple weeks that we've been sort of putting this effort together. Everything that we raise through the GoFundMe is going to the striking miners at UMWA. We can't wait for that to help deposit a new strike fund check in everybody's accounts so that we can get one day longer, stay and one day stronger. So if you look to the chat, if you haven't made a donation yet, and you can, every little bit helps. If you've got $5 to spare, please send it to the UMWA so that we can show our strength and that through this DSA-led fundraiser, we can show that solidarity with the working class has no boundaries, no borders, no sense of difference, but just one strong union, one strong working class. If you are interested in DSA, you're doing things like this, somebody will drop the DSA link in the chat just to get connected with folks in your area. But absolutely make a donation to the GoFundMe on your way out. And we will be closing this down in just a second. Panelists, everyone can come off mute if you like and do a big solidarity shout. But thank you again, everybody, for being here. Maybe the Wright family doesn't need to come off mute yet. But I just saw a question in the chat. If once the fundraiser is completed, how can you donate? We're going to keep this fundraiser open through the rest of February. Even if we hit the goal, we'll just keep it open until the end of the month. And then if the strike is not completed at that point, we will drop the PayPal link for the UMWA Auxiliary in the chat.
Also, umwa.org, there's a strike fund on the website too.
Yes, you can also donate to the International Strike Fund at umwa.org. Either of those are going to get to the miners, but the strike fund is definitely, it builds up and gets sent out to the miners. So thank you again so much for everybody for joining us tonight. This has been really cool and really special to see all the solidarity. All right. Good night, everybody. Solidarity forever.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Have a good night. Carry this solidarity back to your corner of the country.